Montana Territory, 1876. Dust swirled across the main street of Silver Ridge, a frontier town clinging to existence between civilization and wilderness. The late summer sun beat down mercilessly on the weathered buildings, their shadows offering the only relief from the heat. Through this haze rode Isaac Owens, 25 years old and already carrying the weight of a much older man on his broad shoulders. His once bright blue eyes had dulled since his wife's passing during childbirth last winter, leaving him with twin 4-year-olds he barely knew how to speak to, let alone raise. The frontier is no place for love, Isaac muttered to himself as he dismounted outside the general store, adjusting his worn leather vest. Only survival matters here. This had become his mantra since Emily died, the words a shield against the well-meaning but painful condolences from townsfolk who couldn't possibly understand his loss. All he cared about now was keeping the ranch running and somehow raising Tom and Sarah, though he'd hardly spent more than a few minutes alone with either child since their birth. Mrs. Holloway, who'd been caring for the twins since their mother's passing, had finally delivered her ultimatum yesterday. Find a proper caretaker, or she'd be forced to suggest the children might be better off with families back east. The thought of losing them, too, had finally driven Isaac to town, though he had no idea how to find someone willing to live at a remote ranch with a man who barely spoke and 2 wild children who hardly knew their father. Inside the store, Nora Owsley's honey-blonde hair caught the sunlight as she arranged new inventory on shelves. At 22, she was the youngest teacher ever hired for the Silver Ridge schoolhouse, but now stood unemployed after the town's council had abruptly postponed the school's opening until the following spring, citing insufficient funds. Her simple blue cotton dress was modest but neatly tailored, reflecting her Eastern upbringing. Though beautiful, with expressive hazel eyes and a gentle smile, there was a determined set to her jaw that spoke of someone unafraid of frontier hardship. "Mr. Griffith," Nora addressed the storekeeper, "I appreciate the temporary work, but I must find a more suitable position soon. My savings will only last so long." She'd come west with such hope, answering the advertisement for a teacher with dreams of making a difference in a frontier town. Now she found herself arranging tins of coffee instead of teaching children their letters. "Actually, Miss Owsley," the storekeeper replied, "someone might be coming in today who could use your particular talents." His eyes flicked toward the door as Isaac entered, removing his hat with a cursory nod to those inside. Isaac approached the counter without noticing Nora. "Need supplies," he said tersely, sliding a list across the worn wooden surface. "Mr. Owens," the storekeeper said with deliberate brightness, "I was just speaking with Miss Owsley here. She's our new schoolteacher, though the school won't be opening until spring now." Isaac glanced at Nora with disinterest. "Ma'am," he acknowledged with a slight tip of his head before turning back to his list. "Mr. Owens has twins," the storekeeper continued, undeterred. "4 years old, I believe, and in need of someone to care for them, from what Mrs. Holloway tells me." Isaac stiffened. "Mrs. Holloway talks too much." Nora stepped forward, seeing opportunity where Isaac saw only unwelcome interference. "Mr. Owens, I understand you're in need of someone to look after your children. As Mr. Griffith mentioned, I'm a qualified teacher currently without employment. Children need a mother, not a teacher," Isaac replied flatly, still not meeting her eyes. "With respect, sir," Nora countered, "children need care, guidance, and education, all of which I can provide. I can teach them to read and write while caring for your household until the school opens in spring." For the first time, Isaac truly looked at her. This slight young woman with determined eyes and an educated accent, so obviously out of place in the rough frontier town. "Miss, my ranch is 15 miles outside town. It's rough country, hard work, and no place for someone used to Eastern comforts. I came west to teach children on the frontier, Mr. Owens. The location doesn't frighten me," Nora replied evenly. "And I suspect your children need education just as much as they need care." A flash of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed Isaac's face. He hadn't considered his children's education, had barely considered anything beyond keeping them fed and clothed. "Pay wouldn't be much," he said, his tone softening slightly. "Room, board, and a modest wage is all I require. And the chance to teach," Nora added, sensing his resistance weakening. Isaac ran a hand through his light brown hair, revealing the face of a young man beneath the hardened exterior. handsome features marred only by exhaustion and grief. After a long moment, he nodded once. "Be ready tomorrow at noon. I'll come for you then." As Isaac loaded his supplies and rode back toward his ranch, he couldn't shake the image of the determined young teacher. Something about her directness had momentarily pierced the armor he'd built around himself. But he quickly reinforced his walls. She was just someone to mind the children, nothing more. Love had no place in his life now. The frontier had taught him that lesson with brutal clarity. The following day, Nora waited outside the general store with her 2 modest trunks, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. When Isaac arrived in a wagon, his face was as impassive as before, offering only a curt nod as he loaded her belongings. The journey passed largely in silence, the vast Montana landscape stretching around them, rolling hills giving way to pine forests, open meadows, and distant mountains. Isaac occasionally pointed out landmarks or warned of rough terrain ahead, but offered nothing personal. Nora filled the silence with occasional observations about the beauty of the country, each met with monosyllabic responses. "Your children," she ventured finally, "what are they like?" Isaac's hands tightened on the reins. "Wild," he admitted after a pause. "Sarah's stubborn. Tom follows her lead. They don't know me well." The last sentence held a weight of shame he couldn't fully disguise. "Children are remarkably adaptable," Nora offered gently. "With consistency and patience. You sound like my wife," Isaac interrupted, then fell silent again, his jaw tight. As they crested a hill, the Owens ranch came into view. A sturdy log house with several outbuildings, a corral with horses, and cattle grazing on the surrounding grasslands. It was beautiful in its rugged simplicity, but Nora immediately noticed the signs of neglect around the house itself. The small garden was overrun with weeds, and children's toys lay scattered and forgotten in the yard. Before the wagon fully stopped, 2 small figures burst from the house, a girl with wild dark curls and a slightly smaller boy with the same features. They ran toward the wagon, only to stop short when they saw Nora. "Who's that?" the girl demanded, her small face suspicious. "Children," Isaac said awkwardly. "This is Miss Owsley. She's going to be looking after you and teaching you your letters." "Don't want letters," the girl, Sarah, declared firmly. "And don't need looking after." "Sarah," Isaac warned, but Nora was already climbing down from the wagon. She knelt to the children's level. "I'm very pleased to meet you both. You must be Sarah, and you must be Tom." The boy nodded shyly from behind his sister. "I've brought some books with stories in them. Would you like to hear one after dinner?" Tom's eyes widened with interest, but Sarah remained skeptical. "Can't read books," she stated flatly. "That's why I'm here," Nora smiled. "To teach you how. But first, perhaps you could show me around your home." The moment the children led Nora inside, Mrs. Halloway cornered Isaac by the wagon. "About time," the older woman muttered. "Those children need more than you've been giving them, Isaac Owens." "I know," he admitted quietly, watching through the window as Nora examined the main room of the house, nodding seriously as the twins pointed things out. "I just don't know how to be what they need." "Maybe you don't have to do it alone anymore," Mrs. Halloway suggested, her tone softening. Isaac's expression hardened again. "She's here to teach them and care for them. Nothing more." But that evening, as Isaac returned from the barn to find the main room transformed, swept clean, dinner on the table, and most surprisingly, both children sitting quietly as Nora read from a book, making different voices for each character, something long dormant stirred within him. When Tom looked up and actually smiled at him, Isaac felt a crack form in the wall he'd built around his heart. Over the following weeks, the ranch house gradually transformed under Nora's care. Curtains appeared in windows, the garden was rescued from weeds and began producing vegetables again, and most remarkably, a routine emerged. Mornings were for chores and lessons, afternoons for practical learning and play, evenings for stories by the fire. Isaac found himself lingering longer at the house before heading out to work and returning earlier in the evenings. One evening in late September, Isaac came in from the barn to find Nora at the table with the twins, small slates before them, as they laboriously copied letters. "Papa," Tom called excitedly, "I can write my name. See." He held up the slate with wobbly letters spelling Tom. Isaac stared at the slate, then at his son's proud face. That's good work, son," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. Sarah can write hers too. And yours, Tom added. Sarah, still more reserved with her father, reluctantly held up her slate showing PAPA in careful script. Something twisted in Isaac's chest, pride and pain tangled together. Emily would never see this milestone. He nodded stiffly and retreated to the porch, needing air suddenly. Nora found him there minutes later, staring out at the darkening landscape. "They're remarkable children, Mr. Owens," she said softly, standing beside him. "Quick to learn and eager to please, especially you." Isaac swallowed hard. Their mother would have known how to teach them these things. She was educated, like you. Yet you're the one they have, Nora replied gently. And they need you more than they need their letters. I don't know how to be what they need, he admitted, echoing his words to Mrs. Halloway. You're already more than you realize to them, Nora said. Sarah carefully copies everything you do, have you noticed? And Tom saves his drawings to show you first. Isaac looked at her then, truly looked at the young woman who had brought such change to his home in mere weeks. The setting sun caught her honey blonde hair, creating a halo effect that emphasized her youth and beauty. Why did you really come west, Miss Owsley? He asked suddenly. Nora's smile held a hint of sadness. To build something meaningful. After losing my parents to influenza, there was nothing left for me in Boston. I thought perhaps I could make a difference here. For the first time, Isaac saw beyond his own grief to recognize another's. Before he could respond, Sarah called from inside, demanding her story before bed, and the moment passed. October brought the first killing frost, painting the landscape in brilliant autumn colors. One crisp morning, Isaac watched through the kitchen window as Nora led the children on a nature expedition, collecting colored leaves and identifying plants. Her cheeks were pink with cold, her laughter visible in puffs of breath as she chased Tom across the yard. Isaac couldn't remember the last time he'd heard laughter at the ranch. That afternoon, while the children napped, Isaac found Nora in the kitchen, preserving the last of the garden's harvest. You've brought life back to this place, he said abruptly, startling her. Nora turned, wiping her hands on her apron. The ranch was always alive, Mr. Owens. Perhaps just waiting for someone to notice. Isaac, he corrected quietly. My name is Isaac. Her smile warmed something inside him that had been cold for too long. Isaac, she repeated softly. The moment was shattered by pounding at the door. Isaac opened it to find his neighbor, Marcus Jenkins, his face grave. Rustlers hit the Wilson place last night, Marcus reported tersely. Took half their herd and burned their barn. Jim's organizing men to track them. We ride at dawn. I'll be ready, Isaac promised, his expression darkening. After Marcus left, he turned to find Nora watching him, concern evident in her eyes. Is it dangerous? She asked quietly. Isaac nodded. These men are desperate. Winter's coming, and they're stealing what they haven't earned. He hesitated, then added, If I don't return, you will return, Nora interrupted firmly. The children need you to return. Their eyes held for a long moment before Isaac nodded once and turned away, already planning what he would need for the pursuit. That evening, as he checked his rifle and packed supplies, he was surprised when Sarah approached him cautiously. Miss Nora says you're going to catch bad men, she said, her small face serious. Isaac knelt to her level. That's right, to keep our cattle safe. Sarah thrust a folded paper into his hand. Me and Tom made this, so you don't forget to come back. Unfolding it, Isaac found a crude drawing of 4 figures, clearly meant to be himself, Nora, and the twins, standing before the house. Beneath it, in careful letters, Sarah had written, Our family. It's not, Isaac began, but stopped at the hope in his daughter's eyes. Thank you, he said instead, carefully folding the paper and placing it in his shirt pocket, close to his heart. Dawn broke cold and clear as the posse of ranchers gathered. 4 or 5 days they tracked the rustlers through rough country, finally cornering them in a narrow canyon. The ensuing gunfight was brief but violent. Isaac took a bullet that grazed his temple, leaving him bloodied but conscious as they rounded up the surviving thieves and recovered most of the stolen cattle. It was nearly midnight when Isaac finally rode into the ranch yard, exhausted and hurting. Lights still glowed from the house windows despite the late hour. As he dismounted stiffly, the door flew open and Nora rushed out, a lantern held high. Isaac, she gasped, seeing the dried blood on his face. You're hurt. It's nothing, he began, but swayed on his feet as the world tilted alarmingly. Suddenly she was beside him, her arm around his waist, supporting him toward the house. "The children have been praying for your safe return every night," she said, her voice catching. "I've been praying too." Inside, she sat him at the kitchen table and gently cleaned the wound, her fingers trembling slightly. Isaac caught her wrist, stilling her movements. "I thought of them every night," he admitted. "The children. And you." The words surprised him as much as her. Nora's eyes widened, then softened. "We thought of you too," she whispered. For a heartbeat, they remained frozen, his hand on her wrist, her face inches from his. Then Isaac released her, the moment broken by his uncertainty. November brought early snow, and with it, new challenges. The twins, now able to recognize and write simple words, begged daily to read from Nora's collection of books. Isaac found himself lingering after dinner, ostensibly to listen to the children's progress, but increasingly drawn to Nora's animated expressions as she guided their learning. One evening, after the children were asleep, Isaac found Nora by the fire, mending one of Tom's shirts. "You've done more for them in 3 months than I've done in 4 years, he said quietly, settling into the chair opposite her. Nora looked up, surprised by his admission. "That's not true. You've kept them safe, provided for them, given them a home. A house, maybe. Not much of a home." He stared into the fire. "When Emily died, something in me died too. I couldn't bear to look at them sometimes. They reminded me so much of her." Shame colored his voice. "What kind of father thinks that way?" "A human one," Nora said softly. "Grief doesn't make you less worthy of love, Isaac. It just means you loved deeply." Her words hung in the air between them, both an absolution and a possibility neither was ready to acknowledge. The first major blizzard hit in early December, howling around the ranch house and sealing them in for 3 days. Confined together, something shifted between Isaac and Nora. He found himself sharing stories of his early days on the ranch, of meeting Emily, of his dreams for the land. Nora spoke of her childhood in Boston, her teaching aspirations, her journey west. On the third evening, as the storm finally began to abate, Tom climbed into Isaac's lap with a book, something he'd never done before. "Will you read to me, Papa?" he asked hesitantly. Isaac froze, then looked helplessly at Nora. I don't read well," he admitted, the confession costing him visibly. Instead of the judgment he expected, Nora's expression held only gentle understanding. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "you and Tom could learn together?" Something that might have been hope flickered in Isaac's eyes. "Would that be all right?" he asked his son. Tom's enthusiastic nodding brought the first real smile to Isaac's face that Nora had ever seen, transforming his features from merely handsome to breathtaking. She looked away quickly, suddenly aware of the dangerous territory her heart was entering. The following weeks brought a new rhythm to the ranch. Evenings now included Isaac at the table with the children, laboriously sounding out words under Nora's patient guidance. His progress was slower than the twins, but his determination never wavered. Often, Nora would catch him studying books alone late into the night after the children were asleep. Christmas approached, bringing with it both anticipation and melancholy. One evening, Nora found Isaac on the porch, staring at the star-filled sky despite the bitter cold. "The children are hoping for snow on Christmas," she said, wrapping her shawl tighter. "Emily loved Christmas," he replied, his breath visible in the freezing air. "She would have made it special for them." "We can make it special," Nora said gently. Together, Isaac turned to her, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "You've brought Christmas back to this house, Nora. You've brought everything back." She shivered, not entirely from the cold. "I should check on the children," she murmured, retreating inside before he could see the emotion in her eyes. 2 days before Christmas, Isaac disappeared for the entire day without explanation. When he returned that evening, he carried several parcels which he secretively stored in the barn. Nora pretended not to notice, but her curiosity was piqued. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, with fresh snow blanketing the landscape. After breakfast, Isaac surprised everyone by announcing they would all go into the forest to find a tree. The twins' excitement was infectious as they bundled up and followed their father into the pine woods that bordered the property. Watching Isaac lift Tom onto his shoulders to place the star atop the small tree they'd set up in the main room, Nora felt her heart constrict. In 3 months, they had somehow become a family in all but name. Yet spring would come, the school would open, and she would leave this ranch and these people who had come to mean everything to her. That night, after a simple but joyful Christmas Eve dinner, Isaac cleared his throat awkwardly. "I have something for each of you," he announced, retrieving the packages from the barn. For Tom, there was a hand-carved wooden horse. For Sarah, a doll with real fabric clothes. But it was his gift to Nora that brought tears to her eyes. A small bookshelf he had built himself, perfectly sized to hold her collection of books that had been stacked in her room. "Isaac," she whispered, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "It's beautiful." "There's one more," he said quietly, handing her a small, crudely wrapped package. Inside was a book, not new, but well-preserved. Poems by Emily Dickinson. Nora read, opening the cover to find an inscription. "To Emily, all my love, Isaac." It was hers. Isaac explained, his voice rough with emotion. She would want someone who loves words as much as she did to have it. Nora looked up at him, unable to hide the tears in her eyes. "I can't accept this. It's too precious." "Please," he said simply. "You've given us so much. Let me give you this." That night, long after the children were asleep, Nora sat by the dying fire reading Emily's book of poems, her heart too full for sleep. A floorboard creaked, and she looked up to find Isaac watching her from the doorway. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, coming to sit beside her. "About spring." Nora's heart sank. "The school will be opening," she acknowledged. "I'll need to move back to town." "What if you didn't?" Isaac asked, his voice uncertain. "What if there was a reason for you to stay?" Nora's breath caught. What reason would that be? Isaac looked down at his hands, then back to her face. "The children need you," he began, then corrected himself. "No, that's not right. We need you. I need you. Isaac, I know I'm not educated like you. I know this ranch is a far cry from Boston. But these past months, you've taught me more than just how to read." He took a deep breath. "You've taught me how to live again. How to love again." The book slipped from Nora's fingers as he reached for her hands. "When Emily died, I believed that love had no place on the frontier, that out here, only survival mattered. You showed me I was wrong. The frontier needs love more than anywhere. Are you asking me to stay as the children's teacher?" Nora asked carefully, her heart pounding. "I'm asking you to stay as my wife," Isaac replied simply. "If you could love a broken man who's only now learning to be the father and man he should be." Nora's eyes filled with tears. "I already do," she whispered. "I've loved you all along." Christmas morning dawned with fresh snow and new beginnings. As the twins excitedly examined their gifts, Isaac pulled Nora aside. "I have one more surprise," he said, leading her to the window. Outside, where there had once been only empty space beside the house, stood the frame of a new structure. "What is it?" Nora asked, though she already suspected. "A schoolhouse," Isaac answered, a smile warming his face. "By spring, it will be finished. The neighboring children can come here instead of you going to town. Our home can be both ranch and school." "Our home," Nora repeated, the words like a prayer on her lips. Isaac drew her into his arms, his kiss a promise of all the years to come. "You came here to teach my children to read," he murmured against her hair. "I never imagined you'd teach me to love again." Spring 1877 brought more than just new calves to the Owens ranch. It brought a small wedding attended by neighbors from miles around, with Sarah proudly serving as flower girl and Tom as ring bearer, both children now able to read the Bible verses chosen for the ceremony. The schoolhouse beside the main house welcomed 8 students that first year, with Mrs. Nora Owens as teacher. And in the evenings, the family would gather around the fire, Isaac reading aloud from one of Nora's books, his voice growing more confident with each passing day. In those quiet moments, Nora would watch the man she'd married, once so broken by grief, now laughing as Tom corrected his pronunciation or Sarah demanded more expression, "Papa," and know with certainty that love was indeed possible on the frontier. Not just possible, but necessary. As necessary as the shelter of their home against winter storms or the cool water of the creek in summer heat. For in the vast wilderness of the Montana Territory, they had found in each other not just survival, but belonging. Not just a future, but a home.